So, do you like apples? Yeah? Who likes apples? Can we get a show of hands? Do you like apples? Quite a few of you. Not that many not putting their hands up. I'll leave you to reserve judgment on that. That's fine. This year, our family gathered apples where we hadn't planted them, in the manse garden. First crop since we've been in the manse. And this is the second part, really, of a talk of considering how thankful we are for all that God has done for us and that He's given for us. So if you missed last week's service, I'm sorry about that. I'll try to ensure that it isn't too abridged, but I have been warming to a theme throughout the whole of this month. Last week, I talked about growing cress. This week, it's apples. Now, if you like apples, do you like chutney, jam, jelly? I have to say, it's not myself, but Liz, my wife, makes all of them. This year she made crabapple jelly. She made rhubarb and apple jam, again from the manse garden. We did plant a little bit of rhubarb, just to see how that went on. And it was absolutely delicious. I have to say that she's here, but actually it was absolutely delicious. When it comes to apples, perhaps we know a number of proverbs about apples as well. They feature quite commonly. An apple a day. Oh, well done. One bad apple spoils the whole barrel. Yep. What on earth has this got to do with our story about Jesus today? There's a question for you. Well, there were 10 lepers, or as we had it in the version we heard this morning, 10 folk who had a terrible skin condition. Actually, it was terminal. They had leprosy. All of them were bad apples from a disease point of view. And Jesus heals the lot of them, every last one of them, because God's generous like that. His hand's not short. And they all show faith by obeying Him and leaving when He tells them to do so. And they head off to do just what He's instructed them to do. And they immediately receive a blessing. I'm not going to promise you that that's what always happens, but in this particular example, that's exactly what happened. They all left off, they did what they had been told, and they received that blessing straight away. They were healed as they walked off. Now, they're all good apples. Fresh of face, healed completely, and quite happy with it as well. They're no longer lepers, they're no longer ostracized from society. But, are they all good apples? This links in with last week's service when we thought about being thankful, especially considering the harvest of all that we've enjoyed through this past year. A harvest of blessings and all the resources that we enjoy from God's hand, whether we acknowledge it or not. This week, we're enjoying the blessing of a thriving BB company. Perhaps not as large as it once was, but thriving nonetheless. But in our story, we hear that 10 lepers are healed, and only one turns back to thank Jesus. Just one. And peculiarly, from the point of view of that society, it's actually the one that you would have thought of as the bad apple, the Samaritan, whom the Jews absolutely despised. Let's make no bones about it. They despised the Samaritans. It was the Samaritan who was healed and who was thankful. 10 lepers, content in one another's company when the chips are down and when they're all sick. But now that they're healed, will they keep company with one another? Probably not. Now that their fortunes are restored, probably not. The Samaritan continues as an outcast, but now from his former friends. Yet he does take the time to return and demonstrate his thankfulness in worshipping at Jesus' feet with a loud voice and a heart that's full of thanks for what has taken place. And Jesus notes this. He acclaims his faith. He acclaims his faith in the face of all the other 9 who were Jews and had been healed as well. This one individual, for his thankfulness and his faith, is acclaimed by Jesus. What an example to us all. What an example to us all. Now, last week I invited us in our closing blessing to go forth and show our thankfulness. If we were to do that more often, sharing loudly our words of what God has done in our lives and how much we love Him for it, enjoying the company of others, not just outside this place, but inviting them in, and enjoying the company of all sorts as well, for that matter, then perhaps we might just fill this place to bursting and enjoy even more blessings from a God who notices our worship and who also notices our thankfulness. Tell people about what you enjoy about church. I hope you do already. Maybe we can do it more. Tell people about what you enjoy about Boys Brigade. And see whether or not God will bless that enthusiasm with even more company, sharing the things that we enjoy. But most of all, be thankful. Now, apples. Another angle. Completely different angle this time. I've got a nice basket of apples here, a gift from God. How do we show our thankfulness? If we've been given 10 apples, what do we do with them? You have moved, Helen, that's good. I'll try not to get you, Jim. Ten apples. I'm not going to start giving you a rendition of 10 green bottles, if one should accidentally fall. 10 apples. Now, what do we do with our 10 apples? With all that we receive in life, how do we show our thankfulness? What do we do with our 10 apples? Do we set aside one to give to God and use the rest of them for ourselves? Or do we give Him what's left after we've taken our fill? There used to be a time, especially in Scripture, where at the start of the week, or certainly at the end of the week when they'd received all their wages, but ready for the start of the week, they would set aside a tenth of their income to give to God. There's very few places that takes place these days. Some parts of America, some parts of Canada, I've heard that it still takes place, but generally with income tax and all the things that that's put to, the idea of putting away a tithe, 10% of all we earn, is kind of a very rare thing. But do we set aside something for God before we then start to use the rest for ourselves? That's the question. I'll put that one just up here. So, a man was given 10 apples from God, representing all of his life and his income, and as often is the way that the world works. And I hope you lads are taking notice of this, because the real cost of living when you've got your own home and set up for yourselves is a little bit like this. 1/3 of the apples, 1/3 of his means of living, he spent on the roof over his head. Either as a mortgage or rent, whatever it was, 1/3 of his income, just think about that, goes to put a roof over your head. Is that true? That's fairly generally about the case. I'll put them back down. Another 1/3 of his income pretty much goes usually on things like food. You spend a whole 1/3 of your income on food quite easily, when you think about it. And then the final 1/3, generally speaking, he used for budgeting for his clothes, for his recreation, for his holidays, all those kind of additional things that aren't a roof over his head and food in his tummy. So that's the other 1/3 that he had. But hold on. There's an apple left. His tithe to God. His opportunity to show to God what he was thankful for. Oh, I tell you what, it smells so good. Just a little nibble. Oh. Actually, it really is good. Just a little bit of ease. Perhaps he could enjoy just a little of that surplus. And before he knew it, He'd actually pretty much eaten the whole lot. Excuse me, speaking while my mouth's full. He'd eaten it himself. Either as extra food, recreation beyond what he'd budgeted, a nice wee extra holiday maybe. And as a result, all he actually gave back to God was a chewed out core. A chewed out core. What would you think of someone for saving you that? I don't think you'd probably even want this half-eaten apple now, would you? Let's be honest. Far less one that had been eaten down to the core. Would you thank someone for saving you that? Would you acclaim them for that kind of thankfulness? For all the gifts that they had given to you? Because everything we have is a gift in all earnestness. So this simply, I say to us all, and to myself, how are we demonstrating our thankfulness to God in what we return to Him of our life, our resources, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, our voices as well? We think about telling people what we enjoy about what God has done for us and what we enjoy around church as well. There were 10 lepers, and one, the unusual one, turned back and gave Jesus his due. He thanked him for his goodness to him and with what he had been blessed with. He probably thanked him for the rest of his life. You go and do likewise. Amen.